Hey, welcome to another edition of Chop Shop, where we talk life lessons in lacrosse. Chopper here, and I am joined by my esteemed associate today, Zach Rogers. And before we even let him speak a word, Lisa, if you can roll a little bit of footage so people can get some perspective on who this guy is. It doesn't matter if it's high school or college. Zach, as long as the censors don't take this part out of the show, or our sponsors don't insist on it. Right now, people are taking a look at you in action, and you're probably knocking some people over. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Is one of your sponsors like an ice pack company or something? I think that would be fitting. Can I first say that I did not know that that was the name of the show until you just said it. And I had been thinking about a name for the show, and that's better than I could have done. So well done with that.
You're welcome to go ahead and trot a couple of your ideas out if you want. Did you have anything?
Oh, no, I have nothing that could even come close to that. The chop shop is nice. Orange County choppers. You need to get like the handlebar mustache, like the guy from that show, if you remember.
Well, it would tell you, it'd be too bad if I told you that I actually have it, but it's all gray, so you can't see it.
Oh, that's not, yeah, it's the silver fox, the stealth mode.
Yeah, now that chopper show, that's where it's the guy and his son. Are they both in it? Because I think I saw.
Yeah, I think it's like a family. It's like a family.
I think we got into it one time. They were actually wrestling around. So I'm not going to try that with you. But
yeah, hey, so I wouldn't recommend that.
Well, I'd have to have about a 10,000 mile reach, right? Because we do the shows in Southern California, and although you're from here, you now live in Australia. So a long way to go to. But it's always good to be able to talk to my son, even if it's via Zoom.
That's right. And this is the world that we live in today. But yeah, no, I like Drew said, I like the chopper said, sorry, I know to call you that on this program. Yeah, no, I'm from Palos Verdes. I played lacrosse at Palos Verdes High School, and now I live in beautiful Melbourne, Australia, with my wonderful woman.
All right, so people had a chance to see you knocking some heads already, and we're going to get to that. But really, the redeeming part of this show is really, the theme is picking out a goal or an objective that really means something to you and being relentless in pursuing it. And you and I kid around a lot about a lot of things, but I think you've been a good example of that. And I will also preface this by saying, when you're not motivated by something, you don't put anything into it. And I can tell you that as a frustrated parent. I can take basketball.
And coach.
Yeah, I can take basketball. I can take a lot of schoolwork. But I think, you demonstrated a real commitment to certain things. And I think it started when you were playing baseball, 9-10 years old. And again, you weren't particularly interested in baseball until you decided you wanted to pitch. And you joined a very top-rate club, a great club team you were playing for, West Waves, and you were a hard-hitting first baseman. But I remember you hitting up the coach that you wanted to pitch. I mean, just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, baseball actually was probably one of the first sports that I played. I was never a big fan of it. It was a lot of standing around. I think there's a couple home videos of me asleep at third base with the glove on my head, or picking grass in the outfield.
I'm going to try to run that over to you so we can look at Zach.
It's a good video. Huh? I don't know if it's just good because it's me, but it's a pretty funny video. But that was sort of my attitude with sports in general. I was like, I like to be outside, and it wasn't until, like, obviously, my parents kept me going with it, which I'm happy that they did. And sometimes, that's better, just to kind of, keep them going until they find something that they do like. And then I think it was like, I was about 10 or 11, and I decided that I wanted to try pitching. I'd always been a reasonable hitter, and I played first base because that's usually, in the baseball meme world, the tallest kid plays first base. So that's where I played, as being a tall guy.
And you'd been a catcher too, so you'd seen pitching.
Yeah, true. I had caught before, but I was like, the pitcher has the ball the whole game. Like, I'd love to try that out. And that's really when I first got interested in that. And like the chopper said, I was lucky to receive some great coaching with pitching, and had a sort of natural affinity for it. I was a little wild for a while. If any of my friends are watching, I have a lot of friends that I played Little League with and against, and I wasn't always the most on target pitcher. I hit a couple of my buddies in the back, but it was never on purpose. I just like to throw the ball hard. So
yeah. So I do want to capture this. The head coach of the Waves team told me later that you came up to him and said, "Hey, coach, can I pitch?" And he said, "I don't know, Zach, have you ever pitched before?" And you said, "No, but I'm sure I can do it." And that's the attitude that got you out there, and you became a force. So let's fast forward then. And at a baseball practice, I can remember I was running a practice. You were playing for my team when you were 12. Your turn to hit in the batting cage. I look around, where's Zach? I don't know, where's Zach? Somebody says, oh, he's up on the other level throwing a lacrosse ball. And I look up there, and I don't know that you'd ever held a stick before. But the first thing I want to ask you about, I've talked to several people, Tom Borgia, others, about the cathartic moment when you first pick up a lacrosse stick. And it either feels like an extension of your body or it feels totally foreign. And I'm at you, what was it like when you first pick up a stick, and what happened?
I think I'd never had naturally good stick skills. I always just thought lacrosse was really cool. And I'd obviously knew what it was. Like, it wasn't like, oh, what is this? I'm like, oh, that's lacrosse. I've seen that on TV, or like American Pie. That's like what everybody's first experience with lacrosse was back in the day, was watching that American Pie movie. So I was familiar with it. And then I think it was my friend Scott Spielman who had been playing a little bit. He had brought an extra stick, and we were snuck off from batting practice to go have a catch up on the upper field or something. And yeah, I just remember it being this suit. I just thought it was so cool, probably because I just thought Scott was really cool as well. And, you know, he was always doing fun, interesting stuff. But I do definitely remember that day, the first time I picked up a stick, and I'm glad I did.
Well, I can tell you, and I've talked to others, and, you know, you can even, I told the story that you tried to recruit when you were at PV High some very good athletes to your team, but
yeah,
when they would try the cathartic moment, we won't name names, but one kid was really
in middle school as well too.
Yeah. And they just didn't resonate with them, and they knew pretty quickly. So it's not for everybody, right?
Right, for sure.
So, but I will tell you that in my observation, even when you were in high school, at least your sophomore and junior years, I don't know that you were that committed to the team or to working out. I mean, you were good at it and you played it a lot, but it seemed like your senior year is when a switch really clicked and you thought, maybe I want to play more, right?
Yeah. So rewinding just a bit back to baseball, I was playing baseball and lacrosse, which unfortunately happened to be the same season. Had they not been the same season, you know, had it been like a basketball football situation, I would have loved to have played both. Up until really, I want to say the end of basketball season, my freshman year, because I obviously was playing basketball. I didn't know what I was going to play, because you kind of had to pick. It wasn't really, if I had the ability to go back in time and tell past Zach, just go to the pitching coach, because I thought I was a pretty good pitcher. I threw the ball pretty hard. And in some of those summer workouts, you know, I was working out with some of the older kids. If I had known that I could have tried to just show up and pitch, or had managed to try to do both, that would have been really fun. I don't know if that would have been all that manageable, and I'm really happy with how everything turned out, but that would have been a cool opportunity to be able to do that. But yeah, going into the season, I didn't know what I was going to pick, because I had all these baseball friends and I had all these lacrosse friends. I didn't want to make either of them mad at me, because, you know, I really did like both sports at the time, and I was better at baseball than I was at lacrosse at the time. Yeah. So
I think that you had a natural lacrosse IQ, probably because you were interested in it more so than baseball. True. And yeah. I remember telling your mom the first time I saw you out on a lacrosse field, your gait, you know, the way you ran, you looked just like you did when you were 6 years old on the playground. Just, it was a happy run, where a baseball seemed like more of a trudge, where you were still trying to figure it out a little bit. And it just,
for sure,
seemed so natural.
And that's a good thing. It's a good point about the pace of baseball and the pace of lacrosse. Baseball is really fun as lacrosse, if not more fun, when you're pitching and you're in the groove and you're, you know, when me and Joe Keating are like Joe Keating was my catcher, longtime friend, big time fan and friend of the program, I'm sure. And so Joe and I would have these great meetings, and it would just be so fun. Like, we're trying to figure out how to strike out batters. It was great. The problem with baseball is that you don't pitch every game, and you don't hit. You hit twice a game, and if you're not pitching, you know, if you're not in the game, you don't hit. So there's a lot of downtime, and I just got bored, I think. Yeah. So, but that's why it's not for everybody.
Yeah. So tell me about the light that turned on for you when you were about 16 or so. And I'm wondering if it was starting to think about playing college, but you were in high school and it seemed like a light turned on and you just really turned it up.
I think that's a really good point. And again, like, I've been blessed to have great coaches. And I would have to say that was around the time, you know, after the summer in between my sophomore and junior years of high school lacrosse, where I obviously had Lane Jaffe who was a wonderful coach. He was a former head coach at PV High, Peninsula High, coached at almost every level available in California. And then Jimmy Burrell came to the program, and the Ritz brothers. So Xander Ritz as well. And having Lane obviously is like the Zen master. He's the Phil Jackson, right? Of the lacrosse. Just manages to take some personalities that you wouldn't expect to be to be great contributors and turn them into superstar players. And then you have the Jimmy Burrells of the world, which are powerhouse coaches who see potential and grow it in a different way. And so having that sort of that like double-handed approach of like the calm and the fire made lacrosse so much more interesting to me, because I could relate to Lane in a lot of ways, because I find myself, I'm a pretty calm person, but Jimmy found a way to sort of light a fire in me that I didn't know that I had. And I became a much more aggressive player from that. And then I think in so doing allowed me to see beyond Palos Verdes lacrosse and see that there is potential to play in the future. And that got me excited about lifting weights and excited about training. You know, Jimmy and I had long said we would flip a tire for a mile and hit it with a sledgehammer, you know what I mean? And sometimes that's like what you need to do. You just need to put in the meathead hours to get yourself to the next level. And I'm thankful that I had both coaches in that sense, because I think they tailored an approach that was good for me.
You know, you definitely had a very physical style in high school. I think that's putting it mildly. Sure. And interestingly, now in your defense, we had Gary Greenbaum on.
I need to be defended.
I'm going to defend you right now. But if people, Zach, if people are seeing these clips, you need to be defended. So
it was a different time.
Okay, well then, talk about that, because I said, "Would you be obsolete today?" And you said, "No, you wouldn't." So talk about that.
Yeah. So the style of lacrosse that I ended up playing was, I got coached in a time where a big turning point in lacrosse in the last 10 years, I'll say, was the old rule regarding loose ball situations, excuse me, was if anyone is within 2-3 yards of the ball, they're fair game. In order, you know what I mean? It's like you can put a body on that person in order to clear up space. One of the oldest lacrosse drills that anybody ever does is the man ball drill. It's 3 people go out for a ball, 2-on-1. One person takes the man, one person takes the ball. That's a completely obsolete drill, and it's the foundation of lacrosse. It's the first drill you ever do, but we don't do it anymore because that's not the way the game is played anymore. And I understand that the game is not played that way. I coached at PV High after my college and after college career for several years, and it was eye-opening to me to see having to sort of retrain myself to coach in this different era. And is it better or worse? No. Is it safer? Without a doubt, 100%. And I think that seeing it now as a coach, I understand, and I am totally with anything to make the game safer, because I've seen what can happen when you don't take the right precautions. So, but would I be obsolete in today's game? I think I might just be less interested, but I think I just would have adapted. You know what I mean? Like, because I was just being coached in the way that was appropriate for the time. And so like, no, I think that I would have adapted. I would have adapted my body, and I would have changed my approach to lifting weights and hopefully diet to be a slimmer, leaner player, more of kind of an LSM long stick midi build, maybe. Maybe my stick skills would have had to have gotten a little bit better. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's like saying, would Michael Jordan have beaten LeBron James one-on-one in their prime? It's like they played at different times. So yeah. Well, and not to compare myself to either of those guys, but yeah, that's an argument that, yeah.
So, because you played high school lacrosse at 215, 220, and
yeah, it was a big boy.
But when you got out of college and got into modeling, you were like 180, and much fitter and faster, right?
Not quite that level, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but for sure.
You said that maybe you would have played attack and played it at 185 or 190 instead. So
yeah. Never know. I definitely my interest in nutrition and body composition in terms of the way that I looked didn't happen until after my lacrosse career was done. But learning all of that stuff on my own made me realize how important nutrition is to performance. And like they always say, you can't outrun the fork, right? And so it's all about calories in and calories out. And I think that I felt so much healthier at a lower weight, even though I was in great shape, the best shape of my life. I was 225 pounds going into the NLL combine, and just a thick dude, you know, like not a swimsuit looking guy,
right,
but
right.
you know, definitely a bruiser.
Yeah.
And I placed first overall in the combine, so it wasn't like I was in bad shape. And obviously, athletic performance is the way that you look physically is not indicative of athletic performance. But I think that taking an interest in nutrition I would have been able to fuel myself better, and being lighter in today's game, I think, is more helpful than being burlier, just because the opportunities to really put a smack on somebody aren't there. And I think it's just a riskier play, both in penalties and injuries.
All right, I want to tie up high school and to get you into college and beyond.
Yeah. Okay.
We've got questions from our audience, and one is, dear Zach. First, there were two questions. One is, what was your true nickname in high school? Was it A, Crowbar? Was it B, Bonesaw? Or C, Axe Murderer? Which one was it?
Those are all so brutal sounding in today's world. It was the Bonesaw. It was given to me by my good friend Ian Powell. He was the Crowbar. I was the Bonesaw. He was sort of my defensive counterpart. The reason I'm called Bonesaw was, if anybody remembers the original Spider-Man movie, he's doing this amateur wrestling match against this guy called the Bonesaw. And I'll use my crutch here. And like all of the people in the audience are going like, Bonesaw, Bonesaw.
Nice. The other question,
that was a popular movie at the time. So
the other question that we've got here is there any truth to the rumor that you purposely drew multiple penalty flags because you were able to negotiate the terrain when it was covered by flags better than your opponent, and it gave you a footing edge? Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, I was getting good traction off of all those, all the flags that Gary threw on me and Doug threw on me. Okay. No, I never intended to get a penalty. My coaching that I received throughout the early times of my career, where they can't score if they're on the ground, which was the game. That was the game. And if you look at the breakdown of the penalties that I received, which was like, yeah, I got a good amount of penalties, probably more than my fair share, but that's okay. They were never cross checks, or they were never high hits.
Right.
They were always unnecessary roughness, maybe a push in the back.
Right. No, in fact, Gary Greenbaum said specifically that you never got procedural penalties. They were always in the spirit of the game. Now, I was
never offsides. I never went offsides. I didn't turn the ball over.
You're the only guy I've ever seen who, when he had the ball in his stick running down the field, was seeking out contact, and in so doing, drawing warding penalties for running over the defense. Am I right?
Yeah, I think it wasn't even a ward. I'm pretty sure I got an unnecessary roughness carrying the ball, which I had never heard or seen before.
Well, we've got clips of that. I don't know. Lisa may be able to run those while we're.
I don't know, but yeah, that was certainly a unusual situation.
Okay.
I was probably a little aggressive, a little over aggressive with the ball.
All right,
but that's okay.
So off you go to Providence College, walking around with no socks and flip flops in the snow. But if Lisa's got any of those clips, I will show people that your game did not change all that much when you got to Providence. I thought with bigger, better guys, you would not be steamrolling them, but you still were, right?
I find that definitely the jump in between high school and Division I lacrosse, particularly Southern California high school lacrosse and East Coast big time Division I lacrosse. Everyone is the Tom Farrell of their team. Tom Farrell was a great player from Miracosta. Went on to play at I can't remember. It starts with with an L. They're brown.
Yeah,
it's Lehigh, like a brown and gold. Lehigh. He played at Lehigh. Sorry. And big, like 6'4", just a big guy. And he was one of the only guys that I don't think I ever knocked him down.
No, although we've got highlights of you de-sticking him and de-balling, but you did not knock him down.
And so that's a really good point. I had to learn. I had to adapt to play against players of that caliber, because you didn't run into them that much in 2009, 2010 in Redondo Beach, or Palos Verdes. You just didn't see him. So yeah, going to Providence, every player was the best player on their team from wherever high schools they went to. Everybody's big. For the most part, everybody's strong. So you have to adapt. And yes, was still one of the biggest guys on the field. And so I was able to put a good hit on guys every now and then, but they're usually fast enough and smart enough to not run into a situation where they're going to get bodied.
And didn't you also say, not so much about the hitting, but you had some elaborate checks, different checks you used in high school, and didn't those all get put in the shelf? What did they tell you?
Yeah. So you bring up a good point. Yeah. I think this was a phone call or a conversation after a game. I used to throw a lot of over the head checks. I'm 6'4". I can see over everybody's head for the most part. And that just didn't work. It just didn't work then. People had better stick skills. They were better prepared for over the head checks. And I remember in my freshman year in practice throwing over the head checks at goal line extended, which is just like the worst place to throw over the head check, because it's like, if you don't hit it, they score. And I think I had a coach in college. We were breaking down some film, and I'll censor it for your audience, of course. But it was something like, so the clip is I go over the head, and then the guy goes around and scores, and the coach stops the clip and goes like, "Rogers, why don't you break down that play for me?" And I was like, okay, like not a rhetorical question. Okay, yep. I close out on the guy on goal line extended. I throw an over the head check, and he goes around and scores. Ah! No blank. Of course, I will say, of course he did. And,
have you got any examples from Gabs, like with how's that working out for you, that kind of thing? So
yeah, exactly. Like it's the same, that exact thing. Anytime I threw an over the head check after that, it was like,
yeah,
Rogers, how's that over the head check working out for you? It's like, not so good, coach. He went around being scored. No, of course he did.
All right, you can say shit on this show, by the way. So if you wanted to,
well, true.
Okay,
so please.
I would say that you'd set your sights on pitching and became a good pitcher. You decided you wanted to be a D1 lacrosse player. You did that. I recall you personally. You graduated in 4 years from Providence. Great, out of there with your marketing degree. I'm thinking, my job's done. This kid's going to go into the business world, and life's going to be great.
I had a partial athletic scholarship as well, so I saved you a little bit of coin. I appreciate the help on that, by the way.
So you come home. You're sitting on the chair that's still in our living room. You're streaming semi-pro box lacrosse from Canada, and I finally got up the nerve to interrupt your snacks and go, Zach, you started thinking about what you're going to do for a job now that you've graduated? To which you said, I'm going to go play box lacrosse.
I think I could go play on that team. I think we were watching a stream of the Langley Thunder playing the New Westminster Salmon Bellies. And if that name alone isn't enough to get you excited about the Western Lacrosse Association Vancouver Semi-Pro Senior A Men's Lacrosse Box League, I don't know what is. And
I was not excited at that point, I will tell you.
But I obviously played long pole. I'd never played short stick ever in my career. But I saw those guys run around in the hockey rink with the AstroTurf on it, and I was like, this is really cool. And I made a call to a good friend of mine, Doug Locker, who at the time was some sort of a manager or
general
GM.
Manager.
He was the general manager of the Vancouver at the time, the Vancouver Stealth.
Which is NLL, right? I mean,
right. So the NLL is the indoor equivalent of the now PLL, which used to be the MLL, the Outdoor Lacrosse League. And and so I don't even know how I met him. I think I must have met him through Scott Hockstead, who was the head of West Coast Stars, which was the premier club team for the West Coast at the time. And I think Doug was at a tournament or a friend of Scott's. Scott might have even played for the Vancouver Stealth or whatever the Stealth program was. Anyway, through Scott Hockstead, I met Doug, and I made a call to Doug. Doug made a call to a couple of the teams, and I think it was like a week later, I was on a plane to Vancouver with a bag packed and no gear. And I just showed up at the Langley Thunder's sort of compound and they played in the same arena that the Stealth played. And I met Doug, and Doug introduced me to the team. And the next day I was at a practice with a bunch of guys, and I showed up at a house to live with a bunch of good Canadian guys from Calgary.
And you mentioned you'd never played short stick. You'd also really never played box. I mean, your whole career was field lacrosse. So I remember you texting me on your way to your first practice, and you're going, I don't even know what drills they run. I'm not sure when they say, okay, everybody do the XYZ drill, I'm not going to know what that is. I mean, how did that all work out?
Yeah, no, I remember that very vividly. The two times I really remember being nervous for anything. The first one being before my very first comedy sports improv comedy match. It was think like Whose Line Is It Anyway, but it's team based, and it was in high school. And so we were. It's literally a contest. Go out there and you have to make people laugh. And I almost threw up. I had played sports my whole life, and I was like, "What is this feeling? I'd never felt this before." And so that exact feeling is what I felt, and going into my very first practice of box lacrosse with the Langley Thunder. Like you said, I had no idea what to expect. They're going to say, "All right, guys, we're running the over/under cowboy drill," and I'm like, I don't know what that is. And it's exactly how it went. It went exactly like that. They're like, "All right, we're doing this drill," and I'm like, step to the back, try to analyze it. Okay, I'm going to catch a pass from this guy, pass to this guy. And I'll have you know, on my very first play in the practice against the live goalie, I scored a goal. And
they broke in your song, right?
Yeah, they've a California, here we come, right back where we started from. Yeah, that was funny. Because I was the only American on the team, I was the only American in the whole league, I think, for the most part. Well, and that was a good moment.
And you made some great friends up there. Those were some very warm people. So
they were really good guys.
That season ends. Oh, but I have to mention one thing though. We came up and watched you play a couple of games.
Yep.
And I'd stream the games. I knew kind of how you played and everything. I know that they let you fight, right? And it's just like in hockey, you can fight until somebody goes down. And we go, your mom and me and Grace, I think, is there, your girlfriend, and I'm wearing a LaxRatz jersey. It's an away game. I don't know if you were playing the Bellies or whoever. So I'm sitting very prominent in the stands with your jersey, and you're out there just ravaging people. The crowd is restless. And I'm thinking at halftime, I'm taking this jersey off because I don't want to come down and start working on me. So you finished the season, and by the time the season ended, you'd figure that game out pretty well. So we fast forward, it's August, you're back in the same chair, and I'm thinking, time to go work in marketing. Zach, let's grab that diploma. What's next? And you said, what?
I think I'm going to go try to play in the NLL, which was the next level, like the premier level of indoor lacrosse. And I had a couple of scraps in the league, and I had, felt a lot more comfortable coming home than when I left. I remember going to play an alumni game at Providence College, and I had just come off a season of playing indoor lacrosse. My stick skills were so good just because you have to. You either get good stick skills or you don't play. That's what happens. And so I got good stick skills. And I remember going back to my alumni game at Providence, and I was like, "Yo, I'll play attack." And they're like, "Why is Zach playing attack?" Yeah. Ended up with 3 goals, and so it was. It really is the best thing. If anybody's watching young lacrosse players want to get better, go play box lacrosse. It'll get you tough. It'll give you good stick skills. And there's nothing like being able to get knocked down and just pop right back up. And you learn how to do that in box. Yeah. So going back to after my season with the Langley Thunder, I wanted to go play in the NLL. I had gotten a couple phone calls from coaches and people being like, "Hey, are you coming to the combine?" Which I think was like in September, something like that. And
in Toronto.
So I was like, in Toronto, yeah. And so I'd never been to Toronto, and I was back in LA, and I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to Toronto. And so I pack all my gear, go to Toronto, get a hotel, and we have a combine, very much like the NFL combine. They do like, high jump, 40-yard dash, 300-yard shuttle. There's no like bench press competition, although I wish that there had been.
Shooting.
Jimmy Burrell would have been happy to know about that. Yeah, there was a fastest shot. There was a couple like weaving drills, agility drills. And next thing I know, it's all done, and I placed first overall. And I was like, oh, great. Like
what, 100 guys there, maybe?
Yeah, it's like 100 guys there, and all good box lacrosse players. Some of the guys that I had played with in WLA, the Western Lacrosse Association. And I was like stoked to come out, first overall. Then that being said, I trained my butt off with Jimmy that summer as well. And so I feel like I put in the good hours and I got the good reward. Fun fact, Jimmy Burrell was the first overall at his combine, which was the very first NLL combine they ever did. So we have that in common, which is good. But yeah, and then, I was hoping I was really just going to kind of show up, and then I was going to fly home because the next day was the draft. And then we have a couple meetings with some coaches, and I'm like, oh, I might get drafted. I got to go buy a suit. So I go to Sears or something and pick out a suit. It was a horrible, now I work in fashion, terrible suit, horrible suit, not a good one at all. But yeah, so then next thing I know, I get drafted in I think the third round, like 30th overall, something like that, to the Colorado Mammoth. And I remember going in to meet with the Colorado Mammoth beforehand, and they're like, so Zach, do you like to fight? And I was like, no, I will. I don't like to, but I'll do anything. I want to play. I want to be on the team. And they're like, great, that's the attitude we want. And they drafted me in the third round, and that was that.
You went to camp, you came home, and now you're running up and down the hills in Redondo wearing that oxygen deprivation.
Oh yeah, right. So like I was worried about the altitude. I had been camping when I was young, and I've had it in the back of my head that I don't do well at altitude. And I like got short of breath, and I like didn't like the altitude feeling. Here I am drafted to a team and potentially moving to Colorado, high altitude area. And so I get one of those high altitude masks. So I look like Bane from the Batman movies, and I'm doing sprints at Redondo Beach, like up and down like that big hill at Rat Beach, and just trying to get myself ready. And I go to camp just in like the best shape, really. Like, and it was a brutal camp. It was a weekend, 3-day weekend, 3 practices a day. And by about the second day, I had a blister on the entire bottom of my feet. My entire foot was blisters. I went out to the grocery store and bought like those blister pads, like those little donut rings. Yeah. And I had them all over my foot, just because my feet were just wet and just like, and yeah. And like, I didn't do as well as I had hoped. I was in good shape, but there was clearly a big difference in just knowing the game there. And so physically I was able to compete with the guys, but I just wasn't at the level that I needed to be. And that's what's unfortunate about lacrosse, is that specifically in NLL, is they don't hold on to guys that aren't ready. There is no room to develop players, which is why I think that you end up with so many good players who aren't in the league. And and I think that you end up with so much good like, one great thing about lacrosse is that there's so many good men's leagues, because there's lots of really good players who don't make it for one reason or another. My reason was I just wasn't good enough at box lacrosse. I was, you can be the best athlete and out there, but if you don't know the game, then you're just going to get scored on, because it's such a fine-tuned defense. You have to know exactly what's going on. And yeah, there's just no room for anybody who's not ready to start. And that's a bummer. And that's the reality of the game. And that's sort of life in general. But it was a wonderful experience. I thank the Colorado Mammoth program and the Langley Thunder. They like prepared me so well. And I never would have made it there in the first place, if I didn't put myself out there. So
exactly. And so I want to put a wrap on that in this way. You went to camp. I believe there was a round or two of cuts before they cut you. And I think they were about down to the previous year's roster. But I want you to tell people the story about when you got the phone call telling you, because you were walking around with your mom, right?
I was. Yeah, I was walking at the beach with my mom.
I want people to hear what your response was to that. So tell them about taking that
call. Yeah. And so I got off the phone with one of I think the defensive coordinator of the program. And he was like, Zach, unfortunately, we're down to 30 guys and we need to get it down to 22. And you just didn't make the final cut. Real sorry, but that's just the way it is. And I'm like, is there any room for me to be on a practice roster? Because like, I'd love to come out and learn. If that's what's keeping me from being it to that next level, can I come out and learn? And they're like, we kind of have the practice roster filled, and I'm like, okay. Is there any opportunity for me to play? Like, do you have an affiliate so the Langley Thunder team plays during the summer, 3 months. Is there another team I can play on during the other 9 months so I can learn the game and be ready for the next year? And he's like, yeah, like your options are to move to Barrie, which is in Alberta, I believe, and like northern Alberta, to play for our affiliate team, the Barrie Blizzard.
Lisa, if you can get a map up on screen and somehow find Barrie in Alberta, you're better than I never did find it on a map. So we're talking about nowhere, Canada.
No, yeah, to nowhere, Canada for the winter. for the winter, and you can play for those 3 months and then go back to Langley for 3 months, and then try to make the invite to the Colorado Mammoth camp the next year. And I was like, oh geez, that sounds like a lot. You know what, let me call Doug Locker, because I knew that the Vancouver Stealth hadn't had their camp yet, their training camp. So I thank him for his time, and I said I'll get back to him, and I hang up the phone and I call Doug. I let Doug know what's going on, and I tried to seek out another opportunity in the same field immediately. And they were unfortunately full on their camp. They couldn't bring me to their camp either. And so then I was kind of stuck with like a difficult decision on like, do I move back to Canada, a place where I'm not allowed to work? Like I had just spent the summer not working. And do I move to Canada for potentially another 9 months where I don't have a work visa, you know, like take out a loan and live there basically to learn a game? Or do I try something else? And that was a really difficult decision.
Right. So I think we've got a wrap on the box of lacrosse. And the thing that really impressed me was as soon as you heard no, you were looking for a yes, a yes, and asking questions. And so I am going to.
I got a great quote about that. A good quote about that.
Let's hear
it. From one of my favorite entertainers in the business, RuPaul Charles, the queen of drag, who says, "I don't got time for the people who don't love me because I'm too busy loving the people who do love me." So even if you get the no, go find the people who are going to say yes.
Right. I'm going to throw something in my own experience too about, not accepting an initial prognosis. When your older brother was about 15 or 16, Jake went to the eye doctor and he needed vision correction, and they gave him the vision therapy exercises to do so he wouldn't need glasses. And he did these eye exercises. In 3 months, he was fine. A couple months later, I go see the same eye doctor, and I'm 50 or 51. And he goes, Drew, your eyes aren't as strong as they used to be. I'm going to give you a prescription for glasses. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Jake did the eye exercises. Why can I do the eye exercises? And he goes, no. And I go, why not? And he said, because it doesn't work for people your age. At that point, I think most people would have said, no, it doesn't work for people my age. Instead, I said, why doesn't it work for people my age? Because I'm thinking, is it because your eyes are stretched out? Or,
right.
He said, most people your age won't do the exercises. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's all I do is exercise. Yeah. And so I said, are you telling me that it would work for me if I do the exercise? And he goes, probably. I go, bring it. Well, 3 months later, in fact, I used to do the exercises waiting to pick you up at middle school.
I remember. I was just going to say, I was just going to cue the Michael Jordan quote. And at that point, it got personal. And then you got it. Yeah,
I'm like, okay, one more, I can beat you at something. And so
right.
3 months later, I got the 20/25 vision, no glasses. And but I asked the extra question of why not? And that's so important when you're seeking something, is to not just accept no, right?
Right.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I had to accept no because I couldn't just move to Denver and just show up and practice. But no, I understand your point. And that is a really good point.
And you made a very practical decision not to go live in nowhere, Canada in the winter, pursuing a dream that really wasn't going to be a long-term dream anyway, because pro lacrosse is not something you do till you die.
Right. True. Some parts of me definitely wish that I had taken the maybe just taken a few months off, gone, worked, come home, gone back to Langley, given it another shot next summer. Yeah. Would it have worked out? I don't know.
But let me tell you the debate that was going on at home while you were doing all this. I, being a huge fan of sports, am going, I hope he goes to Canada. And your mom's like, he's got to wake up and go get a job. Will you just leave him alone? I'm like, I want to watch more games. It's fun to watch. Yeah.
So, well, it was such a big part of your lives. Like, if for anybody watching, my two biggest fans in the universe were both of my parents. My dad and my mom both made such huge efforts to come see me play at every level that I ever got to play at. And it was just a big part of our social structure. So it was probably just as hard for them as it was for me.
Yeah. So your mom said, don't talk to him. I'll talk to him. And she kind of so Zach comes home. It's now like January or February of the next year. He's sitting in the same chair in our living room, and his college degree is now like a year and a half old. So I go find it.
No. Because it was, I graduated in 2014, the summer, played that summer, did the camp September, October, and I was home like December, January of 2015.
All right, so it's January.
It was a 6-month-old degree.
But my point is that the degree is now starting to get wrinkled like the old papyrus, the Egyptian papyrus, or like you ever see the Magna Carta, what's left of that? The degree is looking like that.
No. Like, Nicolas Cage is about to like come up with some elaborate plan to steal it. We got the Declaration of Independence, and we're going for Zach's degree.
Yeah, because we had it in a glass case with lighting in the living room, and Nicolas Cage is plotting to get it. Anyway, I'm thinking, Zach, you got that cool marketing degree. It's still fresh, buddy. I can get you some interviews. I got you that internship. Zach's sitting in the same chair, and he looks up at me and says,
I'm going to try to do modeling.
And even I looked at your mom and we're like, oh my God, really? But
well, at that point I had been coaching. I started coaching at PV High, Go Sea Kings, my alma mater, under the great Jimmy Burrell, then under the great Lane Jaffe, once and then again. And so it was, I was working, I was doing personal clients for lacrosse lessons. I managed to leverage all of my experience into what at that time was a career for myself. I was making good money. I was doing camps, I was doing lessons, I was doing the tournament cycles. That was me. I was living that whole life. I was living the Robbie Stack dream, chasing lax. And that was really fun. I had coached obviously some teams during college, but getting out of college and coaching at your own high school with players that were kids watching you play when you were there, that was an unbelievable experience. And now I have coached 10, 12 Division I players. And I don't take credit for any of that. It was all Jimmy. I was just there to fix their tie and pack them a lunch and send them off. But that was a really fulfilling experience and some of my best lacrosse memories. But yes, so come March, I have a friend, one of my best friends in the world, Jeff Peterman, cinematographer, videographer, photographer guy. He's like, hey, Zach, I'm shooting this gal for this project out in the desert. Do you want to come? Just like help me out. We can hang out. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I go. I managed to get in some of the photos. He's like, dude, these are really good. Like you look good in front of the lens. I had slimmed down a little bit, partly from my depression from not playing lacrosse anymore, but partly as well from just getting more interested in diet and exercise and not having to be big for anything. I was like, yeah, these do look good. He's like, you should take these into an agency. So I print them all out. I didn't even know what modeling was. I had no idea that was like, I knew that there were like male models. I'd watched Zoolander before, and I love one of my favorite movies. And maybe there's more to life than just being really, really ridiculously good looking. Like I knew the movie. So I go get my little folder and I print out all my little photos and I take them into, so it was spring break from PV High. And I was like, okay, this is it. I'm chasing the dream. If this doesn't work out, I'm going to go get a real job and it'll be all right. I'll have my real job. I'll coach and I'll be good. And so I go to, I Google, luckily I lived in Los Angeles, or roughly in that area, because else I would be pretty limited. I hit, I think 3 or 4 agency meetings a day for that whole week. I went into 3 different Wilhelmina models, Next models, IMG models. I went to every single one in LA with my little book. I had meetings that lasted 5 seconds. I had meetings that lasted an hour. And it wasn't until I walked into Ford models that there was like a connection. There was a click, and they knew right away that they liked me, and they were the last agency that I visited. So it was on the Friday, on the Friday, the very last agency I walked into was the one I walked out of with the contract.
And I just remember you getting up early in the morning, fighting traffic to get up there, staying up there all day, hanging around for, if you got there late for a meeting and had to be last in line. I mean, it sounded like a cattle call. And
it was, yeah.
Yeah. So there were 2 expressions you shared with me that I thought really summed it up on modeling. One was you said, hey, if I go out on a casting call and they don't choose me, and they rarely do, right? Because I mean, the odds are against. It's not because I'm not good looking or whatever. I'm just not what they're looking for, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing with modeling, or even with lacrosse, like getting picked to be on the NLL, like on the Colorado Mammoth. It's not like you're not good. It doesn't mean we're saying we hate you. It means, you're not the right player to fit into this system. Had I been on a team that was a more developmental team, or a team that was a had a lot of really good pieces, but just needed a good athlete, I could be there. I could still be playing today. And just like for these modeling jobs, when you show up, you might think that they want 6'4" brown hair, and they end up going with 5'11" green mohawk. You have no idea what it's going to be. And so the key is you try not to take all of these things personally. And it was hard not to take the lacrosse thing personally, because I think it was, I had a discussion with a fellow coach, Eric Crum, who was a player I played against, had a long, good career in professional lacrosse. We had a conversation. It was like, we both had been cut from teams. And he was like, yeah, it was kind of the first time that you felt like the game didn't love you back. And I was like, oh, when he said that, I was like, oh, I know that feeling. Yeah. But the important thing is try not to take it like that. And I think that I felt like that because it was a relatable experience. But I think I've learned to not have it be like that, because I don't think that's a good way to live, with thinking like things don't love you back, because I think every experience is what you can make out of it. And whether you get picked or not, same thing with modeling. I'm a professional auditioner. If I get the job, that's great. And luckily, and you don't have as many, in modeling, you have a lot more opportunities to make it than you do in lacrosse. You just have more opportunities to show up and get picked than lacrosse. So, sure. Yeah.
The other expression I remember you talking about was in not getting your hopes up too much, or driving away from it, where you said, hey, I didn't have this gig before I went in. I don't have it. Right?
Exactly. That was I think it was George Clooney. I was wrestling in my early modeling days of, I would be so excited. I would go in, meet with these people, and they'd be like, oh, you're exactly what we're looking for. We're definitely going to book you. And I'm like, oh, great. Payday, cool job. Can't wait. And never get a call, never get an email. And that's what's unfortunate about modeling, is that if you don't get picked, you never know why. They never even email you back if you don't get it. You just don't get the job. And it's hard to not let that weigh on you a little bit, especially when you get excited about the jobs. And so I was watching a video about George Clooney talking about in his early career, how he was talking about he would never get too excited for jobs. He would say, walking into the job, I don't have it. Or I'm sorry, walking into the audition, I don't have the job. Walking out of the audition, I don't have the job. It's not until you have the job that they can take something away. So even if you don't get it, don't tie your ego into their decision. It's just purely business. And I think hearing, obviously, one of the best actors ever say that, and knowing that even people at the peak of their game are going through that same kind of a thing, I think that hit pretty good.
All right, that's about as much chopping as we can do on my son, the bone saw here. Zach Rogers, thank you so much for coming on the show, brother.
How much chop could the chopper chop if the chopper shop could chop shop?
Well, I think it's about 22 minutes of film and rolling. So anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this week's Chop Shop. It's Chopper saying thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.